As we're coming to the end of 2023, I just wanted to give you an update on my garden and also share with you the mistakes I made and what I did about it. Because as gardeners, amateur gardeners, we always do make mistakes, and even I do make mistakes. But at the same time, I'd like to share exactly all these experiences I've had while gardening this whole year, and also give you a few tips that I learned. So welcome back to my channel. My name is Alice and I'm the Red Soil Gardener. At the beginning of the year, I looked at my garden and actually I thought I was one of those sort of people who loved to live in a forest, and everyone who came in and said, "Oh my gosh, it's so lush." And I thought, wow, I'm just one of those people who love to live in the forest. And my forest patch was at the bottom of my garden. Now, what I did for the last 2 years is, because I just wanted to have my agapanthus here, my irises here, and my daylilies. So when I sit under my umbrella, I could see all these colors. Then suddenly I noticed that over the years, this garden patch, which has so many different types of plants that I love, it's become slightly not overcrowded to my eyes, but sometimes people say I've got too much. But the beautiful thing about this garden is when one plant comes up and flowers, maybe after a month another flower goes into blooming. So I just keep it here like this. So what happens is that the more I propagate plants, I've run out of space to put them down, so I've gone vertical. So what I do is I have all these hanging baskets, like for example when we did the strings and I didn't know where to put it, so I just hung it on a tree. And then to complement all this, I've got this amazing guy, he does recycled wine glasses, and I buy these, and in the morning I can hear them just, when the wind comes, and it just adds a bit of creativity. Now, one of the mistakes I did, and really I kept on thinking, I don't know what's going on in this part of my garden. Now, this is where I have the African bush daisy, and I have all these colors just going right down. Suddenly I realized that I needed to prune my trees in order for the sun to come in and that my plants can flower. No sun, no flowers. So what I did with my neighbor, we agreed to prune the tree. We don't chop trees, we just prune it. And basically since then, my African daisy are just brilliant. So one tip is that if you do want to have a garden, do look at your garden and know exactly where the sun is in the morning and afternoon. Now in that spot, if you do have afternoon sun, make sure that it is a clear place, and so when you plant your sun-loving plants, what happens, you'll always get blooms, and many, many blooms like my African daisy. Now the result of actually pruning my jacaranda tree, and it actually has brought a lot of sun in this area, is what I did is I bought my oxalis here and bought the little pots here, and since then it's been flowering all the time. My plumbago is flowering, my artotis daisies are flowering. It's just turned this area into a bright and flowering area. So always know, sun-loving plants, you need to get adequate enough sun, morning or afternoon, but in the end you will bring color to your garden. Because I have so much sun, now this area in my garden was actually, bushy shrubs and all that. And so in the end, as I sat under my umbrella, my garden actually looked so small, but I was scared to actually go in here because I just felt it didn't have enough sun. And again, since we pruned the tree, I got a lot of sun. So this area is actually very emotional for me because, as you've been following my channel, we did have Couscous, Mama Couscous, my Pomeranian. And then this year we also lost Piglet, our Couscous's daughter. So for me, this is where I come and I contemplate about my dogs, because this is where we buried them. This is my garden. This is my gravesite for my dogs, because they have spent so much time. They've been so loyal, and I really do want them to be close to me. So I created this grey garden here, and again, it's just starting, but I have my artotis here, which will all spring up once it's settled. I have my cardam here because I wanted it grey and just colours, and just behind there I have my Couscous and Piglet, still in the compound and still close to me. Now, when a few years ago, the house in front of me got bought, and the person who bought it put a 4-story house, and I just went into panic. And then I thought to myself, because I am a gardener, I can plant trees, which I did. But I just let these trees continue growing. And in the end, that's how I created a forest at the base of my garden. But now that I'm into my flowering plants, I had to prune those trees up. And with the result, everything is flowering. So I have all my artotis there are flowering. Look at my Colliers plants. They've just thrown up their shoots. And basically, all this area is flowering only because I'm giving it a little more sun. These are sun-loving plants. Again, as I emphasize, sun-loving plants, in order to get more blooms, they need the sun. This patch of the garden is, as I mentioned, I have my neighbor, but I did prune the trees so I can get more sun. My lantana is flowering, my Mexican petunias, my dahlias, sunflowers, cosmos and pentas, they're all in full bloom only because I gave the sun. Now, when I did this patch, I was worried because we had the heat wave and I didn't know what to do. Without water, the plants will not grow. So I decided to actually harness the rainwater through the gutters, and also collect the grey water from the showers. And what we did is we filtered it, and I put a 6,000 litre tank underground. In that way, when we don't have water, I can always utilize that water. So always know that, try to look at how you can harness your rainwater and your grey water, because it suddenly has caused a miracle in my garden. Now, the other thing is that, which was a hindrance to me before, is even though I did have my gardening going on, is I didn't have enough taps around. Always make your taps accessible. So I have one in that side of the garden. I have another on this side of the garden. So even as it gets hot and everything is drying up, during the weekends, I just get my hose and I can water any area of my garden. So do make sure it is accessible to you. Another thing I've learned over the year is, look at how lush this garden is. Now, before, what I did is just planted. But then what I realized is that what you need to do is to mulch. And through mulching, what happens is that basically you're adding those nutrients back into the soil. And in that way, it gets rejuvenated. And with the result, you get all these flowering plants just popping up because they're healthy. So don't forget to mulch. Another thing, what we do here is at the back there, which we'll send you a photo, is we started our compost pit, and we have a large one. We dug it under. And so whenever we do any gardening or sweeping and we get all those leaves, everything goes into the compost and we layer it. And after 2 months, we can reintroduce this beautiful compost back into the soil. And with the result, everything looks healthy. Now, as I mentioned, is that we had done an episode with the Shatsa daisy. I just love it, and what I've done is I have my hollyhocks in there because once it does come up and all this cluster of daisies, it looks really, really amazing. Now, what happened here when I did plant the Shatsa daisy is we did put compost, we did have a really good soil. But then what happened during the heat wave, everything more or less died. And then I remembered you got to mulch, mulch, mulch. And also mulching keeps all that humidity back in the soil. It doesn't evaporate that much. So with the result, as you see, all my Shatsa daisies are really up and standing. And basically, this is all we have is just organic matter underneath to keep the moisture so we don't lose it, and any sort of, all this sort of stuff, mulching, look at that, is what we do is just make sure that we conserve the moisture in the soil, put the mulch, and the mulch also adds to the soil the nutrients. Now, as I mentioned, is that I've gone vertical because I have no space. So this area, I think we've known about it. We've done episodes here. It was my happy place, then we turned it into my yoga place. And now I decided, because I want sun, I want colors, because everything was a bit like a forest. So what we did is we pruned everything again. And look at my lantanas, everything has started growing and showing colors. And then even if you look at my begonia, the cane begonia, look at that color. And then what happened is I used to have a lot of my daisies here. And once we opened up and removed what we didn't want, I ended up having all these little seedlings of my African daisies. They all sprouted. All these, I'm going to introduce them back into my garden or in containers. But look at that, and my geranium. Now the other thing, because I wanted the sun to come in so I can get color, this was my hibiscus, and it had caused so much beautiful flowering and everything, but it made this place so dark. So what I decided to do is, actually the hibiscus is there. I am not going to allow it to flower anymore because I have so much hibiscus. But then my ice plant, I decided to hang it there, and again they've started blooming because they need the sun. So I've gone vertical. So fellow gardeners, I'm so happy to I'm so glad that I introduced you into my garden, and I have learned a lot from also the channel in terms of sunlight and water and compost and mulching, and putting it all together, you also will have a lush garden. And don't forget to subscribe and press that notification button. Introduce us to your friends and your family. We're on Instagram. Do send me your comments. I post all the time. I'm on Facebook, and do check out all our past YouTube channels. We've covered a lot of plants. Do just go in and have a look, because it may be a plant that you are interested in. And don't forget to leave your comments. I love them. It's been a bit hectic in the last few days, but as soon as we finished, I am back on to the comments. And I wish you a happy new year and Merry Christmas, and we will see you in the new year. Have a lovely day. Bye.